Nice.
All right, y'all are live.
All right,
Ready?
ready when you are, sir.
Okay, we'll call to order a meeting of the Port Aransas Planning and Zoning Commission on March 26, 2026 at 2:01 PM. Item 2, citizen comments and reports. At this time, comments will be taken from the audience on any subject matter. Please limit comments to 3 minutes in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. The Planning and Zoning Commission may not discuss or take action on any item that has not been posted on the agenda. Do we,
I didn't grab a sign-in sheet, but I think if anybody wants to make a statement, speak now. Come on up.
nothing?
Nope,
Okay.
they're just here to hear you talk.
All right, items for consideration. Item 3.1, discuss and take action on meeting minutes from Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on Thursday, February 26th, 2026.
Hopefully you guys all had a chance to read over those. Let us know if there's any changes needed.
No, no. Can I invite a motion?
I move that we
Approve the minutes. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second from Brenda. Okay.
All right, Garrett Pupke,
yes.
Richard Kay,
Abstain.
Alicia Foster,
Yes.
Brenda Owens.
Yes.
Where do we go? Bill Straber
Yes.
and Mike Dan.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, item 3.2, discuss and take action on meeting minutes from Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on Friday, March 6, 2026.
Those minutes should be in your packet too. Hopefully everybody had a chance to read over those. Those were the special meeting that we called.
Any questions? I know. Can I invite a motion?
I just have one change. I was not here on the second one.
Okay.
That was the ninth one,
The 6th.
the sixth, that Friday. Yeah, that was the one at 10. So I think it has me as, is that the right one?
Nope.
We got two of the same.
Okay, that's why I'm like, wait a minute, I wasn't
So
here.
the same minutes in there? Okay.
And no Martin.
Okay, so let's skip over. We'll just pass on the March minutes for now. We'll take that up at the next meeting since those weren't included in your packet.
Okay. Item 3.3, discuss and possible action regarding potential amendments to the City of Port Aransas mobile food vendor ordinances in response to Texas House Bill 2844 Food Truck Freedom Bill.
Right, I mean, this is the main event. So this is the final version based on everything that we talked about at all of our previous, I think, 4 meetings now. I think that we've pulled everything that was discussed into these final versions, and we had to add a couple of things in a couple of different portions of the ordinance too. So to change and to add this food truck bill, we're amending chapter 12, which is business and licenses. But we're also adding in some language for noise, and that's going to come from chapter 10. We also have to change some definitions in chapter 25, some allowances in the zoning section of chapter 25, and then adding in some additional uses in the parking section of 25. So 25 is a big section of what we're changing. So is chapter 12. Chapter 10 is just a very tiny addition there. So I think in the interest of time, maybe we just start with chapter 12 since that's the meat and bones of this new ordinance, and we go through it and see if there's any last minute changes or clarifications that we want to make.
Sounds great.
All right. So you guys should have the one that says chapter 12 on the top. I think that the first, at least the first 6 sections are probably pretty innocuous. That's pretty basic language saying why we have the ordinance, the authority that we have to have the ordinance, saying that they have to have an authorization prior to putting a food truck on the lot and explaining that there's fees associated with that. So if we start with section 1245-10 operational categories, that's kind of where the main portion of it begins. So basically, this is just saying that we have three operational categories of food trucks. We have the food trucks that are operating on their own on a vacant piece of property where they're the only business on a property. That's the first, mobile food vendors as a primary use on private property. The second portion is mobile food vendors as a secondary use on improved property. That is if there's a business already in existence that wants to add a food truck. That's a separate operational category. Then we've got the mobile food vendor multi-sites. It's anytime you're going to have more than one food vendor on the same site. That's going to be considered a multi-vendor food site. So if you guys read over, quickly those sections, if anything needs to be changed, made different, made more clear. Or you can tell me that it all looks good.
You want to do them one at a time or all together?
Up to you.
Either. Okay.
Unless I missed it, on the authorization required, section 1245.5. You're required to get an annual site location authorization.
Correct.
Is that going to be, will it be permissible to do a sublet to somebody else for the permit? Or like say
So
they
the,
want to set up for 3 months, they don't want a full year permit.
Mhm.
Could they sublease it?
I would say probably no, because we need such specific information from each food truck. So their application is going to be so different. So just like the state, once they approve a food truck, that's non-transferable. If somebody else wants to bring a different type of menu in, they have to get that approved again. Or if they want to swap out trucks, they have to get that approved again. I would say this needs to be similar to that, just because that application is going to be so thoroughly tied to that vehicle.
But even though they get an annual authorization, it doesn't mean they have to stay.
Correct.
And
It just says that, hey, we approved this site for you. You can use that site for a year in the way that your application says.
Does
If
that,
they, even if they want to come in for 2 months here, leave, come back in for 2 months, as long as nothing has changed there, that permit's still going to be good for them.
Let me ask that a different
Mhm.
way. If somebody wants to abandon it after 3 months,
It's
Can't.
it's not saying that they're tied to that and only that one food truck can be there. If they give up and, we void that application for that location and somebody else wants to come in, they would just need a new application to start in that location.
just, if somebody has the annual permit and they
Sure.
bug out and somebody else wants to come in and the first person has no intention to come back, let it open up to
Yep.
somebody else.
Yeah, and if they come to us and say, hey, we're not doing a food truck anymore, we would just void out that permit and start afresh.
You're gonna need a permit for every single business that you go to in Port A, or is it gonna be like an umbrella permit?
You're gonna need a permit for every single location because it's a site authorization.
okay.
So now the permit that you get from the state for your actual food truck, you only need that once, and then you can operate anywhere. But
I'm just curious that, so 1 week we're at the Hut, next week and we're at Ace, or whatever the situation is.
Right.
So every single address, we're gonna need to pay you guys more money for another permit to be there.
At every single address, you need to make sure that you apply in the right way and have the correct parking. And in order to do that, you would need a permit for that.
And do we know what this permit fee is yet?
It's going to be our minimum permit fee, so that's just $100. And then it could be that once we establish that and somebody needs to make a change to it, we have permit administration fees that are $25, so it could be something along those lines as well.
And I apologize, you may have already answered this, but if somebody, takes their food truck off and comes back with a bigger food truck.
That's going to require a brand new site authorization because that's it might be a higher parking requirement based on the new food truck. It might, it could be a number of different things.
Right.
Now, if they already have that permit and they just want to swap out the size of the food truck, that's probably going to be where where it's just an amendment to their permit, similarly to how we do building permits. And then it's just that $25 administration fee to change that.
Will you guys be inspecting the food trucks?
No, the state does that.
No, I understand that, but if they switch it out, how are you gonna know they switched it out if you're not paying attention to where they're at?
I mean, there's literally one running right now in Poland.
Yeah,
We are gonna pay attention to where they're at, and they're gonna have to supply that paperwork that they get from the state to us. So, I mean, we rely on the state to make sure that they're doing, you know, their portion the right way. Okay, so, let's go to uses on, private property as a primary or secondary use. Is there anything that you guys feel needs to be added to that section to be made more clear?
And that's where the surface comes in, right?
So the surfacing standards are pretty set by parking standards that are already in our ordinance, so that there is no need to reinvent the wheel here. We would hold these food trucks and these improved private property sites to the same standards that we would a restaurant being built with a parking lot, you know, a parking surface being there. So they're not gonna have any additional requirements, but they have to meet the same standards that our regular businesses, that our regular parking areas do.
Okay.
You know,
Because I knew we
um,
discussed that in one of the other.
yeah,
meetings.
a multi-vendor food site is gonna have to submit possibly a set of engineered plans, depending on the size and the scope of everything. The same way that a commercial restaurant coming in to put, you know, to put a restaurant in would have to come up with engineered drainage plans, those kind of things. So it's not just you can stick them out there. You have to meet the standards that we already hold our businesses to.
Will part of the authorization be the approval of the owner? I mean, I would think that that would need to be
What do you mean, the approval of the owner?
of the person that owns the site.
The
So
the property owner?
the property owner.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
that's part of.
That application is gonna hold a lot of the requirements that we have here. That application is gonna, you know, be, where are you gonna be? What does your parking setup look like? What is the existing business on site? What does their parking setup look like? You know, give us your paperwork from the state saying that this food truck has been inspected, and the fire marshal that you should have gotten, you know, either outside or if you ask us to do it, that inspection. Property owners, your restroom, if there's a restroom agreement or if you've got a restroom on site. So that application is gonna hold a lot of these standards up. So you'll notice that all three of those are the same. The mobile food vendor multi-sites, the addition in there was that the application itself might be subject to additional requirements, and that's determined by the building official, the fire marshal, or city engineer. And that's because multi-vendor sites can be 2 trucks or it can be 20 trucks. There's not really a standard we can write in, but we're gonna take basic building code, fire code, you know, the regular standards that we use for commercial businesses and make that part of the application process. So there's no real way to spell that out besides saying you have to submit, you know, a commercial application for this location.
Well, and that'll be based on the size of it.
Exactly. It's gonna be based on so many different circumstances that are unique to each application that it's hard to write specific guidance in here.
Right.
Do we have any guidance for a mobile vendor that's not serving food? Like a mobile library, a retail.
So
facility?
this whole conversation has only been about mobile food vending because the
Mhm.
state law only requires us to make these changes for mobile food vending.
Okay.
So council did not, you know, kind of direct us to make that open to all different types of businesses. We're
Mhm.
focused only on mobile food vending right now.
Okay.
So that would have to be a discussion with council, you know, to make that recommendation to make it open to more than just mobile food vending.
Well, I would say as far as a multi-vendor site, that's where I was looking at. Like where you have-
That's multiple food trucks.
Yeah,
Yeah, so if you have something other than food trucks in there.
right now that's
We
not
went to
permissible.
Barber shop at the last.
That's not permissible. Yeah,
Right now-
Some of that.
We did.
Yeah, right now that's not permissible. So the only way that you know, a mobile t-shirt shop or something would be appropriate is under our old rules, where it would be in the parking lot of somebody that sells t-shirts. So that is not, retail establishments, you know, service establishments are not pulled into this. Okay, so I'm gonna go on to this, on the second page, page 3, that was kind of the continuation of those multi-vendor sites. So all of this was added in since our last meeting.
Okay.
So this says a designated site operator shall be responsible for overall site compliance with this section, including but not limited to parking, circulation, sanitation, utilities, and general site maintenance. You guys mentioned at the last meeting that you definitely wanted to make it clear that somebody had to be responsible for
Right.
this. And so that would be part of the application process when they're getting their mobile food vendor, multi-vendor site approved. They would have to list who that site operator was so that we always have constant contact with somebody in the event we need something corrected on site.
Do we need some sort of signage for that? Like a posted sign for contact information? If it's closed, if there's any sort of issue?
I mean, if you guys want to add something like that in, we're happy to put that in. We don't require any of our other businesses to put up something like that, but
Well, like a short-term rental, like when,
yeah,
you
given
need
given
to-
the uniqueness of this,
Mhm.
it could make sense. So if that's something that you guys want to
Especially if
add,
there's an emergency contact.
yeah, an emergency contact.
If something happened to one of the food trucks and to keep the others,
Mhm.
that's a good point.
sure.
Just be
So
posted.
911.
you guys tell me what you want to
Yeah,
see
but
in
they
there.
still need to get a hold of the owner.
Mhm.
Tell me and I'll write it down.
I would say a posted contact, point of
The-
contact.
So you think just a 24/7
Mhm.
emergency phone number for the site operator?
Yeah.
Okay, I can add that language in pretty easily.
That way, if there is some sort of emergency or something happens,
Right. Heaven forbid.
they don't find out the next day when they show up to open.
Spring break, 3 a.m. Can you make me a hot dog?
I mean, that's what I probably,
Yeah.
how come you guys aren't open at 5 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah.
So then the rest of these bullet points kind of just reiterate any shared seating area, customer area, common area shall be maintained. And then we didn't want to limit it to a size, so we didn't want to say that all food truck parks had to be an acre or that food truck parks couldn't have more than 4 units or 5 units. So we wrote in that last bullet point to kind of, by building code, use those limitations to limit a food truck site. So you can't just cram stuff in there. You've got to meet standards that will be set in the review process.
And what about the two-way, way in, way out?
If you come back we'll get to
Okay.
it. It's in just a different section. So the next section is location of food, mobile food vendors. So this is just saying that, the authorization, it's subject to zoning. They're only allowed to be on private property. All food vending on public property and then all of the right of ways and everything is listed is prohibited unless you have that city public vendor concessionaire agreement, which city staff will work together to put that together and to see. David really hasn't decided if it's like a staff approval process or if it's something that has to go to city council. So they're still kind of having that discussion. And I think that'll be a big city council discussion at their first meeting.
Okay.
So the language is in here that we can go kind of either way.
Right.
So we just put in some extra language that helps us enforce. Just because you have an approved authorization doesn't mean that you can just go anywhere. You have to be, at your one location.
Site.
We have the little section about the city public vendor concessionaire that might be expanded depending on the direction that city council kind of wants to go with that. Where that's either going to be a staff approval process or like our beach concessionaire where it's a, RFQ'd kind of everybody submits for something out there. So 1245-9 is the general rules. And these are, you'll notice that a lot of these were in all of the versions that we've had before. Saying only one mobile food vendor shall be permitted per site unless the site is approved and authorized as a mobile food vendor multi-site. Each mobile food vendor shall provide parking in accordance, emergency access fire lanes, and traffic circulation has to be maintained at all times. Food vendor sites, including single food vendor locations and multi-food vendor locations, shall provide safe and efficient vehicular and pedestrian access. And then this is where it is, Brenda. Sites shall provide a minimum of 2 points of vehicular access. However, where 2 access points are not feasible due to site constraints, the applicant may propose an alternative access and circulation plan that demonstrates equivalent or improved traffic flow, safety, and accessibility. Alternative compliance and we gave some examples there, might include shared access with adjacent properties, widened driveways to accommodate that two-way traffic, internal circulation and turnaround areas, or limitations on the number of vendors or the intensity of use based on the site, the specific site conditions. And this was, to Wendy's point at our last meeting, to just maintain sometimes two, like we looked at a lot of different site locations, and sometimes two driveways really wasn't going to be feasible. But if you had one driveway that was 35-foot wide or something, so we're saying that the want is two, an in and an out. But if that's not feasible based on the site, that we'll look at traffic circulation plans for that and go from there. So it does say the city may approve, conditionally approve, or deny proposed access and circulation plans through the administrative authorization process based on those site conditions. So it's really going to be laid out in that application that they submit to us. Moving on to restrooms, this didn't really change at all. So this is still saying that they have to have that agreement within 200 feet. Customer restroom facilities are required when seating is provided. So building code says that if it's a to-go only place, if it's no seating, if the thing is less than, 400 square feet and it's intended for to-go only, that you don't have to have restrooms for your customers. We still require that you have to have restrooms for your employees, but in that situation, they wouldn't have to share those restrooms with any customers. So that's still just written in there. Section E is the trash. So we talked about requiring one trash can with a self-closing lid. There's some language in there. There was such a wide variety of commercial trash cans that I went with kind of a conservative 20-gallon. We could make that bigger or smaller, but I would hate to see a tiny little food truck or a push cart have to have a 60-gallon trash can. So that's why we said 20 gallons and then kind of made the operation of that, make sure that they're sufficiently changing it out, doing all of that in lieu of just a huge requirement.
Okay.
And then we added in the language for the multi-vendor sites to have, to come up with a trash plan basically. And that I would imagine is going to include individual trash cans, dumpster situations. But all of that, again, has to be approved during the authorization process. So the part that's in green, it's very basic on the water, wastewater. I am hoping to get a lot of input from the water district to kind of beef that up and to be able to give that to city council at their first reading. The water district wanted to see kind of the meat of our ordinance before they came up with the wording that would be beneficial to have in here. So we don't have that right now, but we do have basic concepts of what we're trying to go with.
Gotcha.
Right. So the electrical power, this is kind of what I've gone back and forth with and what I've gotten a lot of feedback from people in the community about. Previously, we said no generators, but a lot of these trucks operate on generators that are quiet, that are inverters that can almost not even be heard. And so we didn't want to not allow something like that because it could be looked as a, prohibition of a food truck that's approved by the state if we say, well, your food truck's great, but you can't use that generator that powers it. So instead, what we can do is regulate the generator itself and the noise that it makes. So this is where I've put in this language and we added in chapter 10. And so if you guys pull out the portion that says chapter 10 right here, those generators in red on the bottom. Because chapter 10 is where our noise ordinances live. That's where we wanted to put the main portion of it. So basically it's saying that that generator has to be at 70 decibels or below, measured 25 feet from the generator. I think it's before that, Brenda.
Next page.
Keep going.
Not labeled on the top in the binder.
There we go.
Yep.
Got it. We got it.
So that's just saying, except as otherwise specifically authorized in this code, it should be unlawful person to operate, permit the operation of a generator device or equipment that produces sound in excess of 70 decibels, measured at the nearest property line of the receiving property or at a distance of 25 feet from the source, whichever is more restrictive. So quiet generators is what we want. Or, you know, we are saying that they should be connected to shore power, basically. Okay, and then we have our basic language in there for nuisance, noise, lighting, odor, smoke, vibration, signs, visual things. Those are regulated in other portions of our ordinance. So we feel comfortable with being able to cover them based on noted language. Okay. Since we've made it through that portion, do we have any comments, suggestions?
It feels like there's a lot of pointing to administrator for review, which means it's gonna be kind of feel like a lot on the administrator. So it would probably be beneficial to do a Q&A
Sure.
on the website.
Yep. And so my plan is, once this gets passed on to city council, is now I could spend some time putting together that application. And that application is just gonna be basically a how-to. Hey, we're a food truck that we want to be all by ourselves on a vacant lot. This is how you do that. This is what that application looks like. Hey, we're two food trucks that want to be together on a lot. Okay, this is that application and this is how you do that. So we will put together some pretty good, informational guidelines for the public on how to do that.
That'd be great.
Okay, so that covers 12 and 10. So this first section of chapter 25, it says 25-1 on the top, definitions. It might be the portion that was stuck in the front of your binder. Brenda.
Yes.
The rest of y'all, that's in there right after the definition. Doesn't have a label.
Yours is probably installed.
Okay, so basically this is just the beginning of chapter 25 where all the definitions are housed, and we used some language in the zoning area of the chapter that I wanted to make sure that we defined well here. So it's
Just look.
so this talks about mobile food vendors. Okay. So the third page of that is where the new stuff begins. It's in red and underlined. So this defines what a mobile food vendor is, and it defines the 3 different classes of mobile food trucks that I know that we've discussed before. So the type 1, just being like what I call a vending machine food truck, which is just like bags of chips, candy bars, bottles of water, something that nobody has to handle. No food handling, no time sensitive, temperature controlled food is handled at all, is a type 1. A type 2 goes a little bit beyond that. And a type 3 is more like a full restaurant cart. And we don't determine these trucks. The state health department tells them what kind of truck they are, and they pass that information along to us. So part of the application will be, what type of food vending vehicle are you? That'll be at the very beginning, and then that determines where they are allowed to be at. The other things that were added on here were prepackaged food, just so nobody had any musings that, sticking food in a Ziploc bag called it prepackaged food, because that's not the case. We also added push cart in here, and we talked about at the last meeting, maybe having a different requirement for things like the hot dog lady or a small, bicycle kind of ice cream stand, those kind of things, different requirement than our main food truck requirements. So because the Texas State Department of Health already defined this, we didn't have to reinvent the wheel here. So a push cart comes directly from their definitions. And it just, it's those smaller type carts that are easily movable by 1 or 2 people, non-self-propelled. Readily movable. They talk about things being readily movable. So I wanted that definition to be in here so that people understood you can put your food truck out there. You can't build a deck around it. You can't do all of these things. It's like an RV. It needs to be able to come and go pretty easily.
Okay.
So that was the only things that we needed to add for the definitions.
Do we have anything in, like, other than the definition for push cart, is there anything in the mobile food vendor that that, the ordinance that addresses it?
When we get to the parking requirements, you'll see that.
It's for mobile food.
And that was something we added in since the last meeting based on the discussion we had then.
Okay.
Okay, so moving on to this chapter 25 that says districts at the top. Should be part 2 if I think it, some of y'all say part 2.
It's 22 or 14.
Okay, so the first, basically this section of the code just breaks down our different zoning districts and lets you know what can be done in each type of zoning district. So the first section that we changed, because we don't allow the food trucks in any kind of residential zone, is 25-115, which is TR1. TR1 already allowed it coin operated vending machines, those kind of things. So early in our discussions, we talked about having those kind of food trucks. So a food truck that sells prepackaged food only, you know, quick snacks, those kind of things. So that type 1 vehicle is allowed in a TR1. Moving down to a TR2, in those districts, you're allowed to have cafes and restaurants. So we said that a type 1, 2, and 3 mobile food vendor with administrative authorization in accordance with chapter 12. Now, in that zoning district, they don't allow alcohol sales. So we said we wanted to stick with that and not allow alcohol sales as well. Moving on to TR3. Now this just allows everything in the zones above it. So we didn't have to add any language into TR3, but at the last meeting you guys asked if in a TR3 alcohol sales would be allowed in those food trucks. And I said no, but I think that we need to clarify because in TR3, an accessory use that's allowed is a bar. And so if we were to just go with the straight zoning, that would say that kind of a food truck that is a bar or a food truck that sells alcohol would be permitted. And I want to say that you guys were leaning towards not allowing that in a TR3 zone, but I need that language from you specifically, and we will have to add something in here that expressly calls out that food trucks cannot have alcohol sales in those zones. So that's up for discussion for you guys. Now your TR3 zones, remember, are mostly down 11th Street. That whole stretch of 11th Street. There's definitely other sections in town, but that's your main pull.
Have you heard from any mobile food vendors that intend to sell alcohol?
I haven't.
Okay.
A main building,
Mhm.
a food truck to be able to serve alcohol. Like I can't just go and serve alcohol because I don't have a restaurant, a brick and mortar.
Right.
So,
But somebody else might be able to.
yeah, exactly.
So this would be, have to be pursued by a restaurant that's already established.
Correct.
Or a new one that comes in.
Right. I don't know those specific TABC rules. So I would say it's kind of a moot point. Do we want it? Do we want alcohol sales out of a vehicle if they're allowed to do it? You know, maybe not everybody's allowed to do it, but there are going to be people that are allowed to do it. So do you guys want to see those alcohol sales out of a mobile food truck in those TR3 areas?
I would say only if there's a restaurant associated with it in the same parking lot, on
Okay.
the same site, not the same parking lot, but on the same site.
Sure. So
TBC has
Yeah,
their rules
that's
too,
already-
that they're
Just-
gonna require restrooms, they're gonna require
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff through TABC that if somebody wants to sell it, I mean, they're not gonna be able to get their TABC license unless they can show they have access to a restroom. Isn't it like at least two restrooms? Yeah, yeah, so.
it's not going to be impossible for some of these site locations though.
Mm.
So
So
say no unless expressly authorized with TABC license and a restaurant established, or do we just say?
well, no, I mean,
No.
I think that's a
Follow
given.
TABC.
I mean,
I think
you would always have to follow TABC. My point is, do you want
To allow.
to allow alcohol to be sold
Okay.
out of mobile food trucks in those locations or not? Regardless, they have to comply with TABC laws. That's a given.
So is it safe to say if we don't state anything at all that it will be allowed under those
Correct.
conditions? And the
Right.
question is, do we want to prohibit that?
Correct. Do we want to write language in that prohibits?
I don't.
I don't.
No, I don't want.
Really?
Um,
Disagree?
That's a little surprising to me.
Well, I think that looking at the possible use, and I'm just thinking about a place like Sandcastle, right? If they have an event and they have, you know, a mobile bar that serves daiquiris, for instance, that is connected with you know, their space, they've got access to the restrooms, they can do that, they're set up to do that, then, you know, I kind of feel like it's not really up to, I mean, I guess it is up to us, but I think it's also like, how would you use that? Now, is somebody gonna set up a bar on the side of 11th Street?
During spring
Would-
break.
Would they
Yeah.
try?
No.
Would they try? That's different, right? Would it be allowed? No.
I mean, my opinion, I think I can speak on behalf of my husband,
Mhm.
who's a police officer in town, is we probably don't need those mobile vending locations for alcohol service.
My opinion is
And it's mostly in residential areas too.
Yeah, I just don't think that there's any reason
Well,
to
This would
fuel
be,
to a fire.
this would be similar to Beer House, would it not?
No.
Where they have a established restaurant and they've got that.
That's a permanent structure that's attached out there. I
That-
know most people think that it's a food truck or something of that sort, but it's a permanent structure that just happens to be made out of a shipping container.
So if the TABC requires an existing restaurant in order to sell alcohol from a mobile vending bar,
Doesn't have to necessarily be on the same site.
So that's like saying, you know, what they're saying, I think, if I'm understanding this correctly, is like, what's that? That vendor that sets up down there in
5D
5D.
on the county beach.
Right.
So they probably have access to do that because they own restaurants in other
Right.
places that their TABC license can be tied to.
Right, so
It doesn't have
set
to be
up-
on the same site.
Right, so they could set up like a 5D
Oh.
at 11th and.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
this is
I
like,
don't agree with that.
No,
I
I
think
don't
that
agree with that.
the restaurant needs to be on site. That's.
yeah.
Mhm.
when I-
That's where I was reading it. I mean, if somebody
Yeah.
overflow, there's a big waiting area and somebody wants,
Right,
a restaurant,
exactly.
an existing
But I think-
restaurant wants to set up a mobile bar on the other end of the wait thing, they should be allowed to do that, but not if they're gonna set it up on the
Yeah.
corner of G and.
yeah, like if Beer House partnered with Sandcastle and set up their mobile, you know, alcohol sales as you're going down Sandcastle to the beach, and they meet all the requirements for TABC to sell on that site, and they've got this restaurant on a different site, do we want to allow that?
No. I wouldn't.
I like the no answer.
I like the no
I like the
answer.
no answer.
But I just think like, for example, Jay's has a mobile trailer out front. I don't know how often they use it, but it really doesn't matter. If they chose to sell alcohol there in their parking lot,
They're okay because they're a C2.
okay.
So,
This is just affecting the TR3, right?
correct, this is just for TR3.
Okay.
That's
Now,
the
we
same.
could put language in there because TR3, you can have a restaurant as well. So you could have a restaurant there on site. So we could write language that prohibits it unless that same restaurant establishment, you know, is established on site and selling it, if you guys wanted to go that
I
route.
think if it's a restaurant, they're gonna sell it inside.
I mean, you want people to go inside.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is no alcohol sales from a mobile food vendor in a TR3 zone.
That's what I would personally agree with, yes.
I agree.
So I will write in that language too. Okay. And then moving on to C2, it's just an addition of type 1, 2, or 3 mobile food vendors or mobile food vendor, multi-vendor sites are permitted in those locations. And that's basically all we had to change in the zoning areas of this ordinance. Now we'll move on to, I think, the one that got quite a bit of changes based on our last meeting, and that's the parking requirements. So that's gonna be the page that has all the red on it, and there's no good way except to print it all in red. So,
It's the code that Jesus Christ actually was quoted from, so.
so this, on that page 6 of that packet of 13 pages, you'll see that mobile food vendors, and that's up to 18 feet long, those trailers. So the parking requirements are based on each mobile food vendor. For each mobile food vendor, they're required to have 3 parking spots. And then into the special section, if they have any kind of seating, they're also required to have 1 parking spot for every 4 seats that we have. That's pretty standard restaurant language that we've used. Now, everything past that is what we've added based on the last meeting. And our discussion at the last meeting, for those of you that weren't there, were basically that we can't think about every different iteration of food trucks and food trailers that might come up. And so much like the administrator of this code has some leeway in requiring extra spots in restaurants for areas that maybe don't have seating or, you know, different kind of circumstances, you guys wanted to write some language in there that allowed city staff to look at each application to determine if additional parking might be required. So that's what that second page, or that second paragraph is. Administrator may require additional parking spaces based on the operational characteristics of the mobile food vendor, including but not limited to the number of service windows, walk-up ordering, drive-up service, on-site customer congregation areas, and site layout. The administrator may also require parking for areas intended for customer use where seating is not provided, consistent with the treatment of similar areas for restaurants. Then you guys also wanted some mandated required to-go parking areas. You said 10%. So that section was written in. 10% of the total required parking spaces with a minimum of 1 space shall be designated and clearly marked for to-go service only. Such spaces shall be limited to short-term parking not to exceed 20 minutes. Shall be located to provide convenient access to the mobile food vendor. So that same language is just copy and pasted in every section moving forward. So the next section, mobile food vendors, and these are trailers or trucks over 18 feet long. They're just required to have 1 additional parking space. So 4 required parking spaces, and then they still have to meet that 1 for every 4 seats, or additional parking as determined by the administrator if the situation warrants it. Moving on to mobile food vendor sites. So this is the conversation that we had at the last meeting. You guys wanted to, because they were sharing that space, and maybe, you know, families were coming, but they were, you know, going to both of those locations. So it was shared parking was kind of appropriate in a situation like this. So for every mobile food vendor on a mobile food vending site, they're required to have 2 parking spaces. Then the same kind of language from the previous versions are there, plus 1 parking space for every 4 seats that are there. So if you have a mobile food vendor site, let's say that has 10, they're going to be required to have 20 parking spaces just for the food trucks. And then for every table of 4 that they put out, they're going to be required to have 1 additional parking space. So if it's a 10 multi-vendor site with 20 tables of 4, they're going to be required to have, what is that? The 40 parking spaces.
Which would mean 4 to-go spots.
Correct.
No.
Right.
That seems to be a little bit lighter than what we saw in Austin.
You're right. Yep, it was. Okay, and then the only other thing that was added to this section was for that lesser requirement for those push carts. And we talked about it. You really can't go less than 1 parking spot required. So 1 parking spot required for those push carts. And then again, they have that same, if they're going to have any seating, which is highly unlikely, they would have to meet that same seating requirement.
Is there an ability for, I'm just thinking of a push cart, like an ice cream push cart, is there ability for them to actually go down the street and move? No, they have to be stationary.
Prohibited on all city right-of-way sidewalks. I mean, that was,
Do we need to specify that in there under push carts?
no, it's specified under chapter 12, which is where all of the general requirements for mobile food vending units.
So it says specifically that
It-
even if you have a push cart, you can't push it.
If push cart is just a different iteration of a mobile food vendor. So you're still a mobile food vendor. You still have to meet all of the, you're just a baby mobile food
Just a
vendor.
tiny one.
You still have to meet all of those same requirements.
Okay.
Well, that's all I have. That's all that's written. So if you guys think that things need to be discussed further, if you think that things need to be added, if you guys want to take any conversation.
There didn't seem to be any heartache over the generator side.
I mean, I got some calls from people saying, hey, my truck runs on a quiet generator. Why would we not be allowed to use that?
Yeah.
And I think our purpose there was to protect if they're in a residential area and
Right.
the residents around, so they don't have to hear that.
And just the general public from wanting to go eat at their location too. I mean, generators are noisy and loud. And I think if we limit that to just be very quiet generators,
Some of the trailers actually come with the generators installed already. Those
Correct.
tend to be the louder ones, at least with the trailers I experience with. But obviously with the noise ordinance, I think you capture that.
Yeah, and I did a lot of reading about generators because we were gonna try to put some words in here about what to do to make the generators quiet. I think that that was probably a little bit of overkill and that should just fall on the person that is trying to make that generator quiet. They of course have to meet all applicable fire codes and, you know, if they're gonna adjust that in any way and use that generator, we still suggest shore power for these
Right.
units that are gonna be there for a long time.
And when we're considering shore power can be permanent or temporary, correct?
Correct. So we have, I mean, those of you that are familiar with kind of building houses, they have temporary poles that are set up that
Mhm.
can, you know, I mean, it's not an easy feat. You still have to go through the proper permitting, to get that all done. That's pretty general in our, you know,
Okay,
it can be done very quickly and very easily.
gotcha.
But it still is a, you know, permitted kind of.
Because the poles that I saw in Austin, they looked like our temporary poles, however, they're installed permanently.
I think that temporary poles are kind of a misnomer because most people are using those in a temporary way, but we've got a lot of people that
Use them.
are permanently using a temporary pole or what we consider a temporary pole.
And-
There's nothing temporary about it. It's still safe and a valid form of electricity.
Okay, and on the restriction, there, tell me if I'm wrong, did I see that there was some sort of restriction to where it can't be hooked up to permanent power all the time?
So, and that comes from, and these rules aren't adopted yet by, they refer to them as dishes, Department of State Health Services. So these aren't adopted yet, but these are their proposed rules that they have to adopt before May 1st, I believe. So in their rules, they say that it has to be readily movable. Which is why we put that definition kind of in our ordinance too. There should be no alteration, removal, attachments, additions, placement on or around the food vending vehicle that prevents or otherwise reduces mobility. Then it goes on to say, a food vending vehicle may connect to a utility only when filling the potable water tank, emptying the wastewater tank, or temporarily connecting to an electrical source. The vehicle must not remain connected to a water supply during operation, an external sewage or water disposal system during operation, except when emptying the wastewater tank, an external electrical source if it is the only means for powering the vehicle. So I don't read that or interpret it as that they can't stay connected to that while in service.
Okay, because we just don't want to force people to have generators.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Makes sense.
Mhm. Good job.
Is there a time limit at all assigned to the use of a generator? Like, for example, after 10 p.m. or something along those lines?
Apparently, no. You guys wanted to do that? That's within your ability. So,
It just-
I mean,
One park or one trailer in the wrong spot surrounded by, residences,
Sure.
Take, for example, 11th Street where stuff are TR. I mean,
Tier 3.
you don't want to have that generator run until 2 a.m.
sure. So I would say that based on our code, say if I was running a generator at my house to do something, there's not really a time limit on those kind of things, but there is that decibel limit, which is why I wrote that same decibel limit in those locations, because that's generally what's perceived as being too loud. Anything louder than 70 decibels is too loud. But I'm all for writing a time frame in there if you guys want to do so. That might encourage the people that want to stay open late to get shore power.
Yeah, put in temporary power.
Mhm.
That
think
seems
it's
like
all
it makes sense to me. I mean, even if it is a short-term rental behind them, you have somebody with young kids that are there, you don't want a generator running all night long.
Sure.
So what's a good, if
And it doesn't prevent them from operating later. It just means they have to find another source of.
Another source.
no other source of power by a
electricity.
certain period of time?
Correct. It would
But-
push them towards that shore
But like
power.
if they've got refrigerators and stuff like that, they may not be able to turn it off unless they have the ability. I mean,
Nicole, I'm not sure that you can do that. Because you'll be regulating their hours through the generator, and the state's not doing it.
mhm.
Well, we're not regulating their hours because they can get shore power and do that.
State doesn't have- for all these trucks, generator. From the state. So if you're saying no generator at night, effectively shutting down or.
Correct. So there is a path.
Probably just put it under the noise ordinance where it's anything that disturbs the reasonable sensibilities of a person. And put an hour thing on it, so that way if you get a complaint, you can go shut them down.
Okay.
You got the 70, don't you? I mean,
Mhm.
your standard.
Yeah, that's your standard.
It's already in there.
After what spring break just happened, I mean, is the noise ordinance really that important? Because at 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, I didn't realize that we had a racetrack in Fort A.
Sure. And that, I mean, if we didn't have any ordinance, then that would be allowed to happen all the time.
It happened free flowing for 2 weeks straight.
No, that's not true. We had numerous police officers giving tickets, shutting down parties, that whole stretch, so.
Right by the.
I was
Yeah.
literally,
Yeah.
I literally
Yeah.
witnessed it day in and day out.
Yeah, I see all the citations, they got my name on them, so
I
there's,
get it.
there's hundreds and hundreds of them written. So it's not, they're not sitting around doing nothing.
So,
I'm not
think we
saying
need
they
to-
were. I'm saying is that the
So-
noise level is astronomical.
So,
There's only so many bots.
okay, but it's not a conversation about spring break right now. So, getting back to the noise portion of this, I think that we probably should weigh in with Mike Morris to see if we can regulate it in a way. I mean, it doesn't say that you can't regulate something in a way that doesn't permit them to do something. I still feel comfortable with regulating a time or a noise level of a generator. Because I mean, if to your point, if we say you can't have a generator after a certain time, well, what if we say you can't have a noisy generator after a certain time and they only have a noisy generator? We're basically prohibiting them from operating too. I think we can still regulate it in a way that might prevent the generators after a certain hour. Based on what you guys are saying, I'm gonna write it in and then talk to Mike
That's what I was saying.
about getting that opinion.
Is the
And that's typically what we do is after P and Z, we'll submit that ordinance to him to see if there's any kind of legal issues with it.
I think if we can encourage them to have shore power, that makes sense.
And that's,
From a business operator standpoint, having to go back and refuel a generator all the time is a pain and it adds.
change the oil and
You know.
gas.
yeah.
Yeah.
They're not always as reliable as shore power. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why you'd want to have shore power.
I
mean,
agree.
In addition to just the cost savings that you'll likely have.
Sure.
I think it also depends on which zone, right? If it's in a commercial zone, it's not as big of an issue as much as it is in a tier 3 zone,
Tier 3,
you know? I
right.
mean, so,
We gotta be careful of that though, because there's a lot of residential settings and commercial zonings and things like that.
Yeah, but there's also a lot of residential settings in our music overlay zone and they have
Yeah.
to live with, the zone that
be
they
a-
live in.
Gotta be a
Right.
music fan.
mhm.
You gotta be a music fan to live there. They gotta play good music too.
Right.
So am I hearing that we want
Yep.
hours? Am I hearing that we want different hours for different areas? Different zoning districts?
I say no. You put it in there as far as the decibel level of the generator, and I say leave that. I also think that maybe coming back September 1st or September 30th and saying, we've had a season, let's evaluate all of these things that we put into place and make sure that they're working for the intended reasons. And if not, then we need to look at what we need to address, because there's a whole lot of administrator approval in there, which is nice because you have the ability to, approve things and look at things from the standpoint of what's working. But I think that, we may be trying to regulate something that ends up not being an issue.
Sure. But I also don't
Doesn't-
want to not put something in there that will be an issue before
Right.
it's not.
And that's why
Sooner to
I say
make
it's
the
just the-
adaptations at the administrator level than it is changing an ordinance.
Correct. And it's also easier to put something in now and then take that away later rather than not put something in and then have to add it in, because then you've got some that are approved and grandfathered because
I'm totally for clarity. I'm like, be transparent, be clear, like you gotta do this. And so.
So what are your thoughts on hours of generator operation?
So I think the generator's probably gonna have to operate all night. If you've got a food truck that has cold, food that they need to keep. So I think that you can't tell them that they have to turn it off. But I think that if you have already said it has to be a certain decibel, period, it can't be over that, then I think that would satisfy. But again, I think I like how it's written to encourage multiple site or multiple vendors on the same site. I think that's very encouraging. So, I personally, I think that we just leave it with the noise.
Okay.
Anything over that, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure. Everybody else, Brenda?
I would like to hear Mike's opinion.
Okay. No, we're not gonna be Mike Morris, the attorney. Mike Day off.
Yeah, my opinion is shut them down at 10 o'clock and push them towards the shore power.
Okay,
That's what I'd like to do.
okay. Brenda, we obviously won't be able to get an attorney opinion prior to the, approving it today. So let's see what everybody else. So you say 10 PM? No generator usage after 10 PM?
9, 10, which.
Sure.
Something
It's
that's
pretty
reasonable.
standard. So in our ordinance in other areas, we've got 10 and 12 for amplified power.
What do you guys think?
I mean, I think as much as it'd be nice to say that they all shut them off at 10 o'clock, I think it's gonna be inhibiting people's ability to operate their business if we tell them that. That's just my opinion.
Okay, so you say no time frame.
I just don't know if we can, I don't know if that's, honestly, I just don't know if it's fair.
Okay,
I just don't know if that's fair to somebody who comes down here with a food truck and it's all set up to do business and everything in one way and they're gung ho and all this. And then oh, how are we going to keep our food cold? But I mean, as much as I don't want one going on behind the house at 10 o'clock or past.
or 24 hours a day,
or
really.
24 hours a day,
Mhm.
really. Like, I mean, I agree with that, but
When
I
you're
think
setting
that
up construction site, in a new
gentlemen-
build, and you call in for temporary power, how long does that process normally take?
Few weeks.
a few weeks. Yeah.
So do you think most mobile food vendors are coming down here with at least a plan of attack 3 weeks prior to arriving?
Well, I don't know, but they're gonna rent from a property owner that's gonna facilitate these food trucks. That property owner, in my opinion, would be the one, if he's renting a spot for a food truck, he should have
They should put it. in.
whatever resources that's gonna be required. I'd like to hear from
The site approval for the landlord can be mandatory shore power available. It doesn't mean they have to use it, but every operator, if it's available, it's an easy plug-in. It's like a washer plug. This can save them so much money on the fuel, the generator oil has to be changed every 100 hours. That could be once a week. It's gonna save a fortune. And the city can mandate it available, not that it has to be used, but if it's used, if it's available.
There you go.
Yes, sir.
So currently, the way the noise would work, it would already fall under 1051 and 1052. Because it's not enumerated
It's on the
like
top of your
other
page.
places like radios, phonographs, construction, horns, loading, unloading. So it falls under 1051. Any loud, unreasonable, disturbing, unnecessary noise which causes material distress, discomfort, or injury to persons of ordinary sensibilities in the immediate vicinity thereof is hereby declared to be a nuisance and is prohibited. So it's already in there. So if someone calls and complains about a generator who has intensity and duration, it's already a cop can show up and shut them down.
And what
If
would
it's
they use?
69 decibels.
Yeah, what would,
No decibels. There is no decibel. That's only in the enumerated section of the noise ordinance where there's actual decibel readings, either from phonographs or any other thing. But if it's not enumerated, if it is not a called out specific noise, it automatically falls under 1051. And 1051 is the police officer's call. He goes out there and he stands there and he goes, that's kind of a pain in the ass. I agree with you. And he goes and he tells the people to shut the noise down.
So by
That's
adding,
all it is.
by adding this portion in, aren't we enumerating it?
Leave it out.
Okay.
Leave it out. It's already in there, then it's the policeman's call. If you wanna enumerate it, then you gotta, if you wanna enumerate it, you have to experiment. You have to go out. You have to get the decimal reading. You gotta go get a couple generators, stand 50 feet away or whatever your distance is, figure out what the noise level is that's annoying. And then
So we-
come up with a noise, because not all the noise levels are the same.
We did it in the building department this morning. We played generator noises.
No, you need a generator.
It
One last one.
was pretty good.
That's funny.
You need real life numbers if you're gonna, number one, hold up in court and defend your decimal reading, but. You make the decision, either you enumerate it with a decimal level, or you leave it under 1051 and it's the policeman's call.
I just worry under 1051 that if somebody doesn't want a food truck next to them, they're gonna complain about any noise at all. And
You know, then it does boil down to the police officer. He goes out and says, I don't think it's that bad, and he leaves.
What if he does think it's that bad and there's not an operator there because it's 2 AM? Does he then walk over and shut the generator off
Yeah.
himself?
Yeah, he says, turn it off or I'm gonna write you a ticket. And he tells them cease and desist.
But if
So-
nobody's there.
But they've got
'Cause it-
refrigerators.
no,
Why would no one be there but a generator be running?
Well, the trailer's there.
Refrigerators.
Yeah.
Most people put
So do the generators run 24 hours a day in a food truck?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can or do?
If you gotta,
Depends on the situation.
okay.
kind of things
So maybe-
like-
gotta keep something cold, you gotta keep something cold.
I'm pretty have chicken in there, it's gotta stay 40.
Well, I mean,
degrees
that's
or
that's
less.
what's written in recommended. There's short power. It has to be.
Well, then it just became a liability for the city of Porter.
Yeah, I don't.
And a health issue, which is.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
it doesn't matter. If you did it by noise level and no one's there, what's the difference? No one's there, no one's there.
I'd like to circle back on John's idea of mandating shore power, and I have a question for the people who have trailers, boats, other types of vehicles that do have generators.
That's enough work.
Have both shore power and generator, you can run off both of them, is that something that's generally?
It's one or the, you can either run off the generator or you can run off.
But you, in other words, I guess I said it wrong, if you have something that's generator, you do also have a
Yeah.
plug? Okay,
Yeah.
so
So
you don't have to retrofit your trailer to get shore
No,
power in?
generally, they, depends on what size you have, like a 30 to 50 amp, just a regular generator plug, because they're all different applications. But $10-15 changes what application you have.
So what kind of business model are you guys under? You guys have a truck that you're holding food at temperature.
Correct.
How are you doing that overnight?
And now it's plugged into shore.
Okay,
But if it's on the move, so say I'm taking it from where it's currently plugged in, it has to run on that generator.
sure.
To said spot, because it has to maintain a certain temperature or you're violating health code violation.
But no
Right.
one will complain about the noise when you're moving it, because it's a moving vehicle, so.
I get
Yeah,
that.
so I've,
Food authorization by site.
Mhm.
Why can't you look at it, okay, well, this person's gonna be parked downtown where all the bars are, the bars that don't close until a certain time. Let them ride until that bar is open.
I don't understand what you're saying.
Say, like, they close at 10, there's
Sure.
residential right there, close it down at 10.
But like Bernie's is open till what?
But you're not gonna be able, so there's gonna be some locations that just don't have the ability to house a food truck because they don't have the parking requirements necessary. So anything in that Bernie's Palmer Public area is likely not going to be able to be used for that because they are lacking so much parking anyway. So you're gonna have to go to somebody that has an abundance of parking to meet your parking requirements. I don't think there's gonna be enough locations to be able to move around all the time. I think people are really gonna have to commit to a location.
And yes, you can be here, but you can only have your truck here until this time.
Yeah,
If
it's
you have
on
the
the other.
generator running at this time, you need to be plugged in. Because it affects all around, because you're shutting music down at that time, you're shutting the loud noises down at that time. If they can't abide by that, then
So what she's saying is it's based on location.
yes.
Right, so it's if you're in next to a residential zone or if you're next to a bar in the parking lot, it really takes on the use of whatever's around. So in a residential area, it's 10 o'clock. And the music overlay, it's when the.
But there's
bars open.
residences there, you know,
Absolutely. I
so
mean,
so
I-
what would we be basing it on? If we're not basing it on zoning districts, then it becomes very subjective and we have to look at every single use
Well,
surrounding it.
you're having to do that anyways because you're looking at the site authorization. So part of the site authorization is saying, okay, because of where this is located, these are the restrictions for your noise level for this area.
Exactly.
So it's part of that authorization.
I think it would be simpler, may not be the most cost-effective solution, but mandating the site to have access to shore power. And they can turn the generator off whenever, at 10 o'clock if they have shore power. They don't have to run it at all if they have shore power. So that eliminates the noise issues unless there's,
And
at
if
least
they
for the
have it,
generator.
they're gonna use it all the time. Unless it
So-
breaks.
In order to, if I have property that I want to lease to a trailer, in order for me to be able to do that, or for the site permit to be issued, that trailer has to have some place to be plugged in.
Again, I think it's part of the site. I think that's part of the site authorization. I
Is
think
that it
that's,
has to be, so we can't mandate that they have to use shore power because then we would be prohibiting
But
like,
it's
We can
there.
mandate
that it's there.
The site has it.
well, like what Bill's saying, if he's the owner of the site and he's gonna rent out his site to, Bob, that's gonna bring his food trailer, then he's also, for his benefit, gonna wanna provide, even if it's a temporary shore power for any trucks that are gonna be on his site. Because it makes a lot more sense as a landlord to be able to do that. And food trucks, you're like, if I can plug into shore power, it's probably way better. And so you're gonna go to the sites that have shore power available over the sites that don't. So I think that it comes down to the site authorization, really.
Is that gonna be done at the administrative level or?
No, so if we're
That
gonna
is-
mandate that something has to be done, we need to write that into the ordinance.
The-
So if we go back to chapter 12, that portion. And we go to 1245.9. Number G. Letter G.
What chapter you go back from the phone?
12, page 5, right under the green. Where it says G, electrical power from mobile food vending operations shall be provided through permanent or temporary electrical connections that comply with all applicable building, electrical, and fire codes. And our language in there says where such connections are reasonably available. So we could change that language.
Okay, let's see.
Um,
I'm sorry.
On page 17.
Seven.
sorry, it's right under this green. You'll see the big green line.
Oh, yeah, got it.
It's right under that.
So yes, I think that's.
I think that's the workaround.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so here we would take out the wording where such connections are reasonably available. And that would just then read
Shall be
electrical,
provided.
electrical power for mobile food vending operations shall be provided through permanent or temporary electrical connections that comply with all applicable building, electrical, and fire codes.
I like
And
that.
should there be one connection per trailer in a multi vendor spot? Versus
I think that's left
Yeah.
up to building code. I mean, cause you could have a service that might be able to power more than one. But your standard building code is gonna dictate whether they need to have one or not. So if.
What I've seen in the field is one per trailer.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine that building code would kind of mandate
Yeah.
that, but if there was a way to power, two smaller
Maybe
trucks
it's like
with one.
between two trailers and one service speed,
Right.
the two of them.
Right. I don't want to take away that ability and put up
Right.
another pole that we might not need if we don't need it, but I think building code covers that. Okay, and then leave the portion in there that talks about generators.
So
So then back to the time. Now that we know that there's a
So the time
shore
now
power
doesn't
basically
apply.
available for
Good.
each.
Under the noise ordinance, we already got. Right.
So
Then we would have to take the generators portion out of that noise ordinance at all. So then we would just take out and we wouldn't have to adjust chapter 10 at all. But that leaves it pretty subjective, yeah,
well.
to
I
a
was
police
gonna-
officer.
You know, physics question, you have one generator that's at 77 decibels, but you have 4 generators that are all at 77 decibels. Is that an additive effect?
That are all influenced by.
we'll have to conduct a field study.
We would have to conduct a field study. We could take a field trip. I would imagine that it would probably be cumulative,
Yeah.
but I don't know that for sure.
I-
I'm not good at physics. Sound physics. Okay, so now that we have shore power established, do we want to put a time frame for mobile food vendors to use generator power?
I think you take out the time requirement. I mean, I think this pretty much takes care of.
Because why are they gonna wanna spend the money that
Yeah.
involves a generator if they can just plug in?
But I get it. That makes sense. But this still gives them the ability to keep running that generator if they want to. And I'm not saying that we should go one way or another. I'm just saying if there's a temporary pole that they're just not using and running a generator, I mean,
Yeah,
think
unless
it's
they're-
chapter 10 should cover it if somebody's complaining about it and the police go out
Right.
and they've got an alternative.
I
So-
say you leave that in, we've changed it over here, you leave that in under section 10. And then you add that as one of your line items on your site evaluation.
Add what?
Are you gonna be working off of generator or electrical power? What's available?
Okay.
And then that way, you can have that discussion, or we can add that in there. as
So
far as
there's-
what's available.
We
You're
can
gonna
go
want
keep
to
an ear
have
out.
some caveat to continue to operate their business if there's an issue with the shore power.
Sure.
I mean, at this point, they're always good. This is gonna steer them towards the shore power, but things break, especially in a very corrosive environment like we
Sure.
have.
Mhm.
And you always want to have an emergency backup and not lose all of your inventory.
Got
right?
it.
So I think, is there any sort of amendment that we can make if there's some sort of mechanical issue with the shore power? Or do we need to go that into the weeds?
I don't think we need to go that into the
Because if the power is out for their trailer, it's out for everybody.
Right.
So, I mean, and that happens.
So we,
No,
hey,
no,
you're saying we
That's
don't,
for
we
all
don't need to,
businesses.
we don't want to restrict them from turning on their generator if the power goes out.
Right.
That's
Mhm.
where
Right.
you were going.
Right.
So-
Mhm.
Okay, so what I'm hearing now is that we're comfortable with the mandating of shore power being available, not having the time, leaving in the generator decibel reading.
Mhm.
Agreed.
All right, next issue. Anybody?
That was mine.
Do we need to have any further conversations about things before?
What is the deal for the grease disposal? I know I talked to Charlie's on about this.
So those trucks are, a lot of them have those grease kind of holding capabilities with those trucks, and those are approved by the Department of Health, the state level department. So the people are going to need to either work with for our mobile food vendor sites, the site operator is going to have to work with the water department to see if there's any kind of collaboration. I think the water department's still kind of building the plane as we're flying and trying to figure out how they're gonna do that once they know what we're doing. So if your question is, how are they gonna handle that? They're gonna have to handle that the way their truck requires them to handle that, or the way the water department tells them they have to handle that.
Somebody's gonna set up a permanent sign with multiple sites or something, they can set up a shared grease tractor. So the ones that are gonna be fully mobile, they're gonna have to dispose of their grease off the island. We do not have a site for them to dispose of their grease, nor are we going to. They're going to have to go to an approved site off the island and dispose.
Or
They just screw it into a 5-gallon plastic drum and throw it in the garbage?
No,
They have to go to the proof.
I can't at my house.
I
No, I know.
mean, Brendan, maybe you know this, like in Austin,
Hang on
the
just a
food truck guy that I talked to, he says that there's a company
It comes.
Hang on
that
just,
comes and
right, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, we have
okay.
Where's the cup?
Approved disposal site for them.
So from what I've read and what I understand, they can either take their truck to one of those approved disposal sites, or they have people that come and kind of like porta potties.
It's like people come suck out retrap here right now.
Correct. And that would have to be an approved way to do that. So that discussion is going to have to happen in that application. So part of their application is, how are you going to handle, I don't know how exactly how we're going to word it yet, but how are you going to handle your grease? Are you going to take it somewhere? Or are you going to have somebody come and service you?
Now that the classifications, we can determine how we're gonna handle, what, Kathy was talking about.
Perfect.
So we'll have that, we've got a meeting here in a couple of weeks, and we'll draft that and get it back to you.
Right.
We're gonna have we're gonna ask you, as a part of your ordinance, to require that you have an authorization from the water district that the folks have displayed to Scott and his crew, that they have a means to dispose of both water, wastewater, and grease.
Right. And not only are we going to make them tell you how that they're going to do that, we're also going to make them tell us, so that everybody's aware and we're working on the same page. Absolutely.
Something from us saying they've satisfied us.
Yep. And Scott and I have discussed that. It's going to be very similar to how we do any new residential, any new commercial business, is they, get that authorization from the water department and then bring that to us as part of our application. So that paperwork from you. Yes, absolutely.
And maybe a fine if they get caught putting that.
My guess is those fines already exist.
They do.
All right.
Okay, any other
Yeah.
issues that,
Do you
any
have anything else?
any-
Dave?
issues from Dave, Wendy?
I'm gonna, regarding parking.
Mhm.
If you mandate a certain number of spaces to have this time limit thing. How does code enforcement even attempt to monitor that? Is it worth the effort, or is it just require the space and be done?
Are you talking about for the to-go?
To go.
Yeah, it's 15-minute things. I mean, that's something.
I think it's gotta be,
signage,
Yeah.
I would think.
No, signage, I'm talking enforcement.
When we spoke about it before, I think it was mainly trying to get people who park there, they know that they're only supposed to be there, so they won't just stay there.
But
So
it's
it's to encourage people to move
Right.
their cars,
But
but
if
we're,
they're required spaces, and then it's a full-time person that wants to sit down and eat.
so
Where
say,
does that person go? Instead of being in those, the
Yeah.
honest person then goes and parks on the street. So you're putting that person that's coming anyway. You're taking away a potential full-time spot. And all you're doing is displacing that person out onto the city street.
and now because it's written into our ordinance, we have to make sure that we're enforcing
Yeah,
that and
it's-
make sure that they're enforcing it too.
To me, the value isn't there. If you're forcing a sit-down customer that's coming for a 30-minute meal. And he pulls in and there's 3 of those spaces, but nothing else. He goes, crummy, I'll go park on Avenue C on the street. To me, that's not worth it. I'd rather see that person in one of those, in a space.
well, on the other side of that, when we had this discussion, was people who want to go and they come in and all the parking spots are full. So where are they gonna park to get there to go?
But would you rather have that to-go person parked on Avenue
Yeah.
C, or would you rather have the person that's sitting there for an hour parked on Avenue C?
Then the
That's a good
full-time
point.
sit-down guy
Right.
parking for 45.
And so I think that when we brought it up, I think we used Subway as an example. And so let me just use that. So Subway is in a shopping center right now that they're mandated to have, let's say, the exact number of parking spots that they have. If we were to start seeing that parking lot being full 100% of the time, except for those empty 3 spots from Subway that are only for to go, and then people were parking on, 9th Street back behind it, it could become an issue that we would go and say, hey, Subway, you can't put 15-minute parking limits on your parking spots here. These parking spots have to be available for everybody that's used on your site. So my opinion is that the to-go spots are a very good idea, but I think that's a business decision, not a city mandated decision.
So leave it up to the.
That's my suggestion, but I wrote it in there because everybody was, pretty strongly for it.
Anyone else out there have an opinion on that?
Unless you just make there be additional parking, if they're gonna be a to-go only business or a person to go business, and you can just add on the parking. My biggest fear was in and out of this food truck parking area, I mean, food truck in a multi-site place, having it being so overwhelmed that you can't get in and out, which deters people from going, which is a problem with business people. But also having them now park up and down the street, which may or may not be legal depending on where it is. There's not gonna be a whole lot of sites that's available, right? But I don't wanna see more parking problems than we really have.
Right.
Yeah. So let's think about maybe one food truck on a spot on Roberts Street. It's the only food truck that's going to be on that lot. So they're required to have 3 parking spaces. And so that's kind of automatically their to-go parking because those 3 spaces, they don't have any seating. They would all be to go. So that solves its own problem. But now let's say it's that same location that has 6 tables for 4. So now they're required to have 3 parking spaces plus 6. So they're required to have 9 parking spaces. We would require, based on how the ordinance is written right now, we would require them to have 1 spot there for to go. But if it's a mobile food truck park and they had 40 spots to sit and eat, we're requiring them to keep 4 of those available to go and say they're, all their tables are full and they've got a lot of people there and they've got 4 empty things because nobody's taking it to go. They're all sitting there and, maybe they have a playground or something for the kids and everybody's staying on site. Then you're displacing 4 of these parking spots, to Dave's point, for people that aren't going to be to go. If people park there, code enforcement gets phone calls. Hey, this Tahoe has been parked in this 20-minute spot for an hour. It's kind of hard for us not to go and have to have some kind of interaction there because it's our ordinance that we're enforcing.
So I think looking at the parking overall, we want to encourage people to bike, to walk, to, especially in areas where you can. But the reality is you've got 8 spots and something's going on next door. It's everybody from next door that's parking there. So, like.
If you're not
we don't-
if you're not monitoring and protecting your own.
But if you're busy, making food and doing that kind of stuff, you're not out there being a parking police. So I think it's a challenge no matter what. Like people are going to park where they can find a spot, whether it's in the parking lot, in the neighbor's parking lot, on the street, it doesn't really matter. They're going to park where they can park. And so trying to encourage a business to say, hey, leave a spot open for people to kind of come in and out so that it does kind of capture that business, especially if you're to go. If they're all to go, they're all to go. I mean, they're all in and out and you don't have seating, but I guess my point is that we're trying to police something that it's not really, it's bigger than just a food truck parking issue. It's more the parking that's available for everything. And, having to look at who is going to police that. And is that our police force or is that a separate, parking police? I'm just saying that out loud.
How
you know,
often is law enforcement called because somebody parked too long in a temporary
What, 2
spot?
weeks ago?
Right. But if
Yeah.
they called right now and said, hey, there's a Jeep parked in front of Subway and they've been there for 37 minutes and it says 20 minutes, we say that's not a city ordinance. We can't enforce that. That's a
But it-
Subway issue. You need to go talk to Subway about that.
So if Subway called, they wouldn't call law enforcement, they'd call a tow truck. Say, get it out of here. So I think.
So
They
that's a-
couldn't because they don't have proper
I was
towing
gonna
signage on their signs.
You gotta have the proper signage.
Well-
Available by owner, blah, blah, blah. It will go to Miss Woody's with a
So,
phone number.
but that's,
They can't
that was where I was
Yeah.
going. So if instead of having the city mandate that we have temporary parking and there's gotta be signage there, somebody suggested leave it up to the business owner.
Right.
And if they have the proper signage, then the city has nothing to do with, it. There's no enforcement issues.
Right. So say we didn't write anything about to-go parking only, and Joe has a food truck park that has 3 spots, just like Subway, that are to-go only. 20 minutes. It's now on him. That's his business decision, and it's probably a fairly good one, so that somebody has easy access in and out. But it's up to him.
Maybe
And
that's
this-
better left up to the owner of the
I
establishment.
think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
so to that point,
Mhm.
I wanna. So I think that I'm with Dave. I've policed parking for 20-something years at the corner of Cotter. And before the ferry moved and after the ferry moved. And trust me, even though you're inside in a business, you know who's in your parking lot. And you know if they've parked here and they've taken their dog for a walk somewhere, because that's valuable to you.
Mhm.
And as a food truck operator, your parking's gonna be valuable to you and your customers. So you will regulate it. You won't be too busy to not know that someone has parked and you go out there and say, hey, wait a minute. Parking's premium here. I need this spot.
But, to that point, I agree 100%. And I think that what we're seeing though is that if you had a food truck parked across the street from you
Yeah.
and everybody that went to that food truck parked in your parking lot,
That would go move.
you would tow them, right?
No. I
Or
would
you
not
would,
tow-
you would,
no.
you would go out and tell them you need to, because you're parking. And so that's the point, is like, when you're in a food truck or when you're in a parking lot, people are gonna park, at Trout Street. They're to go to Sip Yard. They're gonna park at, Bernie's and walk over to
City's not gonna be able to do
1886.
anything about that, so.
But
She'll get them.
It's every day on.
It's every, so
On Saturday, they had a whole car show in our parking lot. Every space was.
Okay.
taken by
So
cars.
as
I
it,
guarantee you, these owners are going to police their own parking.
so my
So we just
my
amend-
point is, as a
yeah.
business or as a food truck, those parking spots are premium, but we don't really have the ability to police them other than going out and asking people to move. And if they don't want to move and you call the cops can't really,
98% of the people tell you, I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking.
they move.
Yeah.
And this is 20 years of experience of asking people.
And you don't have to call the police on that. You just call a tow truck. Say,
Right.
"Get out of here."
Well,
But
if-
I'll tell you my story.
so.
Hang on just a second.
So,
Yeah.
so are we talking about removing the requirement of a to-go spot?
Yes.
I think
I
just
think that's
leaving it
what
up
the
to food
discussion is
truck.
right now.
Yeah.
Agree.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
Yeah.
Last time was, y'all said, let's add to-go spots of 10% because we think that will be the amount of to-go people. Don't give up spaces, don't require less spaces, let them self-regulate what it is,
Yeah.
but don't require less spaces because we already have a parking problem.
Yeah,
So-
and I.
so
when-
it wouldn't.
that's where I was-
No,
we
no,
had
it's not.
One and we added to the 3,
Add it to.
so they have to have 4.
Okay,
And
so
then whoever can park there, whatever.
do
but
we just,
they need to
so,
have enough.
Well, the
okay,
total remains the same. It's just that the 10% minimum allocation
goes away.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But the
Yes,
total
but-
remains the
To
same.
change this number though, this number now becomes 4.
So now,
Because you were requiring 1 to-go spot,
well,
so you're.
no, it
No, it was
no.
a percentage of the
It's a
total.
Percentage of your spot.
10%.
So we weren't requiring an additional to-go spot.
If
We
you
were saying you were required to have 3 spots and at least 10% of those have to be
And
to
it's-
go with a minimum of 1.
Yeah.
Because if you have 3 spots, the 10% of that is 0.3. And so you would just bump that up to 1.
Right, and I'm saying, you don't wanna lose that 1. You want to-
But that 1 is built into the
It's
3.
already in.
It's already in that 3.
That's not the way I read it.
Yeah. So
I read it that it was 3 plus the.
No, it's 3.
For
This is just
one of
saying
being
Ten-
designated.
10% of
10%
those.
of the required parking spaces.
So you're saying that 3 became 2 and a 1 to go.
Correct.
Yes.
That's not the way. I read it.
Technically, if you had one food truck that had 3 parking spots, that means they have no seating. And all of their spots are to-go spots because they have no seating to eat on site. So let's say we had a food truck, a little food truck that had one table for four, they're required to have 4 parking spots, 3 for the food truck and 1 for the seating.
Right.
We were going to require them to have one of those spots be designated to go,
Okay.
not an additional spot on top
See, I
of
read
that.
it as an additional.
Mm-mm. No, you're saying the mandated by the food truck, the mandated by the seating, added together, 10% of that was to go.
Just to be clear. Removing the temporary,
We wanna
not reducing.
Move the
temporary.
10% without reducing the,
That last paragraph, that's detailed. 10% of the total required parking space with a minimum of 1 space shall be designated and clearly marked to go service only.
correct.
Just
So
eliminate that.
what I'm hearing is that you guys want to eliminate that paragraph from every section.
And if a food truck wants to make all 3 of their spaces.
the committee members, please. Thank you.
So if a food truck wants to make all 3 of their spaces to go, they can put signs up that say that to keep people from parking there. And if they want to enforce it, they can put their sign up for Miss Woody's.
Yeah.
It says,
If
Right.
they want to if they want to choose to have to-go spots that are properly marked, they can enforce that 20-minute limit.
mhm.
But if they don't want to, then people can park there to go, or people can park there to stay. Okay.
I like it.
You know, the golf cart parking, regular parking.
Unless you want them to have golf cart parking instead of regular car parking.
All the other restaurants seem to have some kind of plan like that, so I was just curious.
So in order,
Come up, I'm sure. it comes up.
in order to have, anytime you want to reduce from a full-size 9x18, or depending on the layout, you have to come to council or P and Z for an alternative parking plan. We don't, as administrators, we don't just allow golf carts. That is a P and Z and council approved. So
Probably ought to just think of that before it comes up.
as everything is written right now, they would be required to be full-size car spots. If they want to approach us for an alternative parking plan, that's written in, and they have to go through the same process that every business has to go through for that.
Hey, that one time you showed all the parking lots through town. All the golf carts were parked in regular parking spaces, so, and not in the golf cart.
Yeah, I don't think it would ever be my recommendation to reduce any required parking for a mobile food vending unit to golf cart spots. Golf carts can always fit in car spots. Cars cannot always fit in golf cart spots. So from a staff level, I wouldn't ever push anybody towards that.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else that we are not thinking of? Anything else that anybody has? Oh, I guarantee there's.
Yeah. That's all?
That's all. Okay,
Good.
so I just want to go through this very quickly and talk about the changes that we've made so that you guys understand what we're recommending for approval moving to council.
Up and that's one question.
Mhm.
What do they do for signage, like A-frames?
So they still have to meet the same signage requirements. It depends. So if they were a mobile food truck on their own site that didn't have any signage, they should be able to have the same signage that a business has. But if they're on a lot that already has a business, we treat that just like 2 businesses on a lot. They can either share the main sign, and they can both have an A-frame sign that's 48 feet apart. So they have to comply with they have to comply with our sign ordinance, just like a second business on the lot. Okay, so chapter 12, we added to the mobile food vendor, multi-vendor sites under 124510. We added that a site operator has to have a 24-hour contact information with a sign at those locations. Now, sorry to open up another box, but do we want to do that for every food or just the multi-vendor sites?
I would say-
Every
no.
food truck
Let
at a
me-
location needs to have that information on it, or just the multi-vendor sites?
I think if they're getting a site permit, then we're gonna give them something that shows that they have a permit, right?
I mean,
And
typically
so
it's done
typically-
digitally.
Okay,
but yeah.
but if I'm just gonna say a sticker or a card or a placard that has their mobile food, approval number.
If you guys want that, we need to write that into the ordinance because that's not standard practice right now for how we handle permitting.
Okay, so we need to have a way that if there is an emergency, that person is contacted, whoever.
That's what I
Has
was
that
gonna
written.
ask.
So
Would
instead of-
emergency have access to that?
Say it again.
Would dispatch have access to that?
We would make sure that,
Because I know, like on golf carts, if one breaks down or is in a wreck, the police can call dispatch and say,
Absolutely.
hey, can you get a hold of the owner? I think that would apply to the food truck,
Mhm.
especially the single unit. If one was being vandalized or something, the police could call dispatch and get a hold of.
what's the point in having it for a multi-vendor site over a single food truck? Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Do you want to require it for everybody? Do you want to require it just for those mobile vendor sites? Or if that's the case where if there's an emergency, dispatch is always going to know who to contact.
I would say for everyone.
I honestly don't see the value in having the sign up there. I mean, if there's an issue at all with any of them, more than likely it's the police that's gonna be called, and if the police
But
have
like-
access to those records, then problem solved.
Yeah, if dispatch knows, say there's 8 trailers on there and they know whose trailers they are.
So part of the golf cart ordinance is that the city people that handle the golf cart registrations provide that information to dispatch. What if we just make that a requirement here
Yeah, I
for
think that-
all mobile food vending, whether it's single or we put together that database and we give that to dispatch and then take away the sign requirements at all?
Yeah.
Because I agree
I
with
think
Bill.
that's
I think people are gonna get phone calls at 4 a.m.
Yeah,
that they,
that's a-
how come you're not selling me a hot dog?
Right.
Yeah.
We don't want to make it harder for people than, you know.
Bill would be the one calling.
I want my hot dog.
Okay, so instead of adding a requirement for a sign with a 24-hour 7 number, what I'm gonna add in is a requirement for the city to provide dispatch with
Dispatch.
a database of contacts for those mobile food
I
sites.
think
I
that's
think that's more fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that we're gonna have that change there.
And then dispatch would have the address, the.
They would have all,
contact for the manager,
absolutely.
like if
Yep.
it was a trash issue or something.
Yep, okay, so that was the only change that we made for 12, so to add that requirement that we give dispatch that information. So for chapter 10, for the noise, we're not adding anything. We're
I thought
leaving
you
that.
were leaving the generators. in.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, we're leaving it just like it's presented.
Yes,
But I think on 12.
Oh,
B,
I apologize, we
That's okay.
took out the language that said,
where such connections were reasonably available.
so we didn't add any language, but we just took
we
out
took that out.
that language, so those 2 changes to 12, good catch.
Okay.
Chapter 10 stays the same. The definitions for chapter 25 stayed completely the same. The section where it talks about zoning in chapter 25, the change that we made was no alcohol sales from a mobile food vending unit in a T3, a T1, 2, or 3, TR1, 2, or 3 zone. So you have to be in a commercial 1 or a commercial 2 zone to allow for any kind of alcohol sales.
Well.
And I think that's the only change we made there. Then for the parking, we took out the 10%.
Okay, I have one question, I'm
Mhm.
sorry. Back to the no alcohol, we didn't change anything else in the zoning other than no alcohol for the mobile food vendors.
Correct.
Okay.
Unless they're in their own parking lot, like a brick and mortar.
In a,
Have-
no, in
We
a,
did it,
in
we
a
talked-
T3, we said no.
No. okay.
Yep, because they have brick and mortar, you can go inside and buy beer.
Mhm.
Okay.
You can take it outside and stand by
Well,
the food
you know,
truck.
and I was thinking about. What is that beer house there? If they wanted to put one out there, they can't, they have to use the other.
Correct.
Oh, okay. I thought because they were there, they could have one.
Mhm.
Okay.
Now, they're different because they're a commercial zone, so they could.
Oh, okay.
But if they were where Sandcastle was, they couldn't.
Oh, okay.
So in a commercial 2 zone, you could do that. in a non-commercial zone, you can't.
Okay.
And then in the parking section, we just took out the 10%. Everything else remains the same. Oh, yeah.
Did anyone see any reason to revisit the number of spaces that we had come up with? No, okay.
I do want to say that the shared parking and the mobile vendor sites, the multi-vendor sites, I like that going with the shared parking. I think that does encourage more vendors to get together and create a multi-vendor site, so. Let's say.
And then I can't remember if we talked about the portion of push carts that I added in there
We did not,
into the parking section. Or
We
did
talked about it.
You
Okay,
mentioned it. yeah.
sorry.
other than it was there.
That they need one parking spot.
Right, and that we, and I'm not sure that I think what I didn't touch on was the wording that I put in there that says the administrator may apply the parking requirements of push carts to a type 1 mobile food vendor when the administrator determines that the scale and operational characteristics of the vendor are comparable. So that's for those vending machine type of sales. You know, we could consider that a push cart and maybe only require that one spot rather than a full 3 spots if it's a come and go quickly kind of thing, just like a push cart. That's all I have, guys.
That's it.
We could have started it.
That only took
Right.
7 months of my life.
All right, well then, with that.
Oh, no, then we wouldn't have got out of here.
All right, we'll adjourn the meeting at.
Well, nope.
No?
So we have to, hang on, we have to,
Mike's ready.
we have to approve this. So we
Okay.
do have to
You
take
need a
action.
motion?
Yep,
Okay.
so we need to take action. The motion should be subject to those few changes that we just reviewed. I don't know that it's necessary to
List each. change.
list each change because we did just go over them. But I can say them for the record one more time. We made the change to chapter 12 to include the information going to dispatch about all of that. We made the requirement that electrical shore power be provided at every site. We did not change chapter 10. In chapter 25, we took away the ability for mobile food vending units in T1, 2, or 3 to sell alcohol. And we took away the requirement for to-go parking spaces.
10%.
So those are the changes that we just made. So any motion should be
Can I
with
invite
those
a motion?
Move that those as stated be approved.
Motion from Bill,
Second.
second from Brenda.
Garrett.
Yes, and I wanted to say, thank you so much, Nicole, for putting all the time and effort that you did into this.
Yeah, 3 a.m. Well,
Yeah.
that's a 3 a.m. waking up and thinking about what could go wrong with food trucks.
Yes.
But also what could go right. So
Yes.
Alicia Foster,
Yes.
Brenda Owens,
Yes.
Bill Straber,
Yes.
Mike Dan,
Yes,
motion carries.
yay, good job, guys.
okay,
That's all we got.
we'll adjourn at 3:44.
Second.
Actually, you don't want to bang?